understand that the actor in this debate is actually the Communist Party of China, not necessarily China as a general country. All the benefits coming from the OO is the benefits that, you know, as a country China will get. But what will the benefits towards the Communist Party that is actually going to be given? Because we think that there is no engagement in that sense. But second thing is, we are actually going to characterize more about what is the Communist Party agenda to begin with. We think that, I'm going to copy like Jose, like, we think that they are actually going to focus on example like mass redistribution of wealth and also uplifting for the poor, because this is actually what they already teach towards their students inside the communist league, in which they need to follow since they're students, since being a student. Now, the second biggest risk about this BRI is there is actually needs to be answered by the opposition bands is where this money come from, right? Because we think that China is actually a developing country, but suddenly they can have a huge investment. We think that this investment majorly coming from the shadow banking that is actually really risky. Why we think that this is really risky from shadow banking? Because we need to understand that this policy is actually a long-term policy, and it's actually still have more than 20 years for us to complete this. We think that if we don't have a clear, why we think that shadow banking is unclear? Because it is unregulated and unsupervised by the country itself. Because it is actually coming from many other countries. The second is that the economy budget from China is actually lowering because of the trade war that is happening with US. That is actually they lose their biggest bargaining partner, right? We think that this is actually really bad for us to still maintaining this policy, because we think that the source of the money is actually unclear to begin with. Second thing is, we think that the Communist Party interest is actually how that we need to take side with the poor of the China, because we think that there is still 30 million of Chinese people that is actually under the poverty line. We think that this is really the momentum is really correct for us to, example, take side with this poor. Because what? Because first, that we think that China is actually the Communist Party is actually changing the constitution in which they make Xi Jinping into a lifetime president. We think that this is really bad. Second thing about BRI, who are actually going to benefit from BRI the most until 2049? We think that it's actually going to be the elite and also the investor who has the money to begin with, because China really needs it. The fact that you are actually going to have your voters saying that you are actually leaning towards the poor people, but what is being benefited from the BRI, the biggest policy that you have today is actually the elite, is actually going to increase the chance of the retaliation coming from your country, because that is actually not the interest of us. We want our voter to keep loyal for us, and so on and so forth. No, thank you. But second thing, what we need to actually understand that China is actually the producer, because they have huge industry and so on and so forth. Here. We need to understand who is the market, right? Here, the market is actually like Africa, which is they don't have actually much bargain purchasing power. Second is also Europe. They already got EU and they already have their own economical chain. So the question becomes, what market will China enter in this debate? The second thing is the next thing is that China is actually already have a foreign policy that is actually going to benefit them, which is the South China Sea policy. We think that in the South China Sea policy, in which that we are actually going to bargain and also strengthen our 9-dash line, that is actually going to take the majority control of the South China Sea, because we think that there is actually many minerals and also fishery that we can exploit. We think that we are actually winning in this sense. Because why? Because the international arbitration are unable to prevent us to keep doing our military activity right there, and also we think that the opposition of Southeast Asian countries, example like Philippines and Vietnam, are already agreed to do joint exploration. This means that the momentum is actually correct for us to really focus on this policy. Why? Because this policy is actually going to create more tangible and also direct benefit. Because we already know there is oil right there is actually being fast and unexplored. Why we think that this is actually a bigger market rather than the industry that is actually going to be bring by BRI? Because we see that in the Middle East that the oil price is actually declining because of the war like ISIS and Syria and so on and so forth. And we think that this is a good chance for us if we can utilize this oil in order for us to get more market. We think because We think that this is aligned with our local interest to uplift the electability by our to close our undemocratic decision to make Xi Jinping a lifetime government, because we are actually going to give example like a better local domestic economy strength and so on and so forth. That is actually really good. But second thing is about why that international relation with other country is actually unnecessary to begin with in the status quo. Because we think that China already owned the utility of the mining in Brazil, and also in Africa, and also the minerals in Tibet. We think that to increase only on the sense of easier accessibility is not something that is going to be really that significant. But for us to focus more on the South China Sea is actually what is actually going to bring us more benefits. But before 6, is that good? Yes.
Okay, so why would you want to rely on exploitation of oil when the price of oil always fluctuates while the stability of having alliance is more consistent?
Because those alliances are actually going to increase the maximum utility in 2049. We think that we already told to you that actually the investment is actually unclear, that we don't know whether or not we can continue this, because the source of our investment mostly coming from private. There is also unclear whether or not they will sustain in our project. But at least in our side of the house, when we focus on exploitation of oil, we already show to you that in many countries there is actually scarcity of oil. But how we say that OPEC is not actually really that strong anymore today, we think that is really, we think when we already can show to our voter, that to our people, that actually we are winning in this place, that actually we have a sustainable economy that can uplift you, we think that is actually going to be more beneficial, rather than to stay with like white people, like European people, in which that is actually going to emphasize that our government is more leaning towards the elite rather than towards the poor people. Second thing is that even if that in the side of the house industry, it will actually absorb more jobs, our people will be blue collar people. It's actually going to be bad, because example like pollution and also health is actually going to kill them slowly. This is actually not aligned with our domestic interest. And we think that our domestic interest and our international policy needs to be aligned because of the controversy that we already make in the status quo. Thank you.